Episode loading. Play. You are listening to Freshly Squeezed.
I just said to the band, like, rain or shine, I don't want to be on this label anymore. I said I'd rather, even if we become a flop and no one ever wants to listen to us again, I'd rather have no label and be who we are. And I was sick to death of it, and we all felt the same.
Hello and welcome to Freshly Squeezed. This is an emergency broadcast. I'm Jim, and this episode is a little bit different to normal. Instead of introducing you to a load of new bands and new music, I want to tell the story of one of the most successful breakthrough acts in the UK in recent years, Stone. So you may have seen Finn Power, frontman of Stone's recent post on social media, pretty much lashing out at the band's former record label who oversaw the release of their debut album, Fear for a Lifetime. He did not hold back. He criticised the social media that they were told to make as a band, he criticised the false promises that he says the label made, and some of the actions that almost saw the end of the band. That post, whilst it's still up, is linked in the podcast description if you want to go and check it out for yourself. On this episode of Freshly Squeezed, I caught up with Finn so he could tell that story in full. And it's clearly, from what you'll hear, one that means a lot to him and incites a lot of passion, as does his music and the band itself. And he'll talk about what that means for the future of the band and what's going to happen next as well. If you're a fan of Stone, this is a must listen. If you're a new band who is just starting out on their journey, this is a must listen because there's some important lessons within this conversation. Now, this episode of Freshly Squeezed was recorded a little bit on the fly with Finn sitting in his very sunny back garden in Liverpool, so do bear with the sound quality in some places because it is very much worth it. Let's do it. Finn, welcome to Freshly Squeezed.
How are we doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. So, we're going to talk about the statement that you made on social media earlier this week, kind of hitting out at your former record label. We're going to get into exactly what you said shortly, but before we get into what you said, why now? Why does this feel the time is right to kind of make this statement and to talk about the experiences you've had over the last couple of years, I guess?
Well, the band's literally stepping into the studio and recording the second album. We signed to a new label, but I kind of noticed the animosity and, it was like a dark cloud just lingering. I felt like as much as we were back to being Stone and back to being like a heavy rock band, and there was no one telling us to be pop, and there was nothing getting told about my music, I couldn't quite move on until I at least released it to my fans. I felt like the fans of Stone kind of relate to Stone because we're outspoken and speak the truth. And it was partly because I wanted to warn other artists, because the way it happens is so quiet, it sneaks in. And I just also felt like I needed to say this. I pride my life on speaking truth and being honest, compassionate, and I try my best to, I think for my own sake, I need to release these energies for me to move on. And I want to be able to, when it comes to this next album, feel fully like cleansed in myself. And the next album talks about it. There was no doubt that the couple songs in this album, reviewers would have known instantly what I'm talking about. One of the songs on the album is called Moulin Rouge, and it's the first song I wrote after we separated from the label. And it's one of my favorite songs ever written.
It's event.
It's not even an event. It's just so it's very metaphorical. I love it. But yeah, that's why I felt like I had to do it now.
Okay, well, I do want to talk briefly about what's coming in the future in a bit, but let's talk about the message you put out, the post you put out on social media. When you wrote it, you read it and actually it's quite optimistic about the future of the band. And you've said you've kind of been rebuilding over the last 9 months, and that at one point Stone almost ceased to be because of what happened with your record label. Talk me through exactly what happened. Why did you have this disconnect with the fans that you talked about? Why did you have this discomfort with your relationship with the label that put out your last record?
Well, the second we signed, like I said, the minute we said album, it just got brushed. I remember a song, a lot of the early Stone songs were like almost spoken word rap with kind of hardcore element behind it. And I remember quite quickly phone calls being like, can we not lean overly on the spoken word? And that was my stick. I've moved on from it naturally now. I still do bits of it, but that was it. And then I think within 2 months of signing, I was in with writers, and a lot of the time the songs was written already, you know, it was quite quick to the point where I realized that the label only reacted nicely to songs that I'd written with writers. And, you know, I'm not against these writers. These writers are great people. You know, I've made some great friends with them. You know, I don't blame them. Do you know what I mean? But it's not their fault. But also I didn't need that, you know. Money, our biggest song, was written by the band. Let's Dance the Real Thing was written by the band. Waste was written by the band. Leave It Out was written by the band. Even the biggest song off the album, My Thoughts Go, was written completely by the band. I think the other three instantly felt pushed out. You know, it came to the point where I think they had no dialogue with the label anyway. But I think at the same time, you know, we were young. I was like, you know, early 20s, obviously only a couple of years ago. I just kind of didn't want to get it wrong. I'd worked my life towards this. I was so obsessed. We've all been so obsessed with getting this to happen. And, you know, I remember the first meeting we had with them, they literally said, we just want to support your vision. That's all we want to do. And it's quite funny, on the first gig we played to the label, the A&R was in our mosh pit. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is what this label wants to do. And then the minute we signed, that never happened again. It just became like back of the room corporation. That's how it was like. It was pretty surreal, to be honest. We all noticed it very quickly. But I'll jump forward, that's a story I can say for ages. But it felt by the time it got to the album, you know, we'd been asking to do one for ages. And I think at that point, we'd been pushed into doing TikTok lip syncs. We hated doing them. Oh my God. We used to push back with emotion on doing those things. And it was just so annoying. Hated doing them. We had our own vibe. We were funny in our own way, and just hated doing them. And then I think after the album came out, I was definitely leaning a lot on alcohol and drugs as well to cope with a lot of the mental stuff with it, because I just felt like I'd lost, you know, the band was scared on camera. I was a bit worried on camera. Like, none of us knew how to act for social media anymore. It was a bit crap. We hated doing it.
Just want to pick up on a couple of things you've said there. A few of the elements that you talked about, like, it feels like what you're describing is you were assigned to do one thing, and then when you were brought into the label, they almost tried to apply a formula to you, like a cookie cutter approach that like homogenized your music into whatever they felt was going to be successful. Did that feel like what was happening?
I think we just went through the stereotypical major label experience. You know, I think we got signed with a promise of what Stone was, and I felt like it was massive for alternative music. A band who was quite, you know, a band like us, like Heavy Music, was signed, and instantly it felt like the only songs they wanted was Radio 1, and that's all they wanted was Radio 1. But I felt like Radio 1 were a bit gutted because they liked us being heavier. You know, I've got no hatred towards the songs. The songs were just made, just made poppier. Like, it's even the way we played these songs, the album songs live. It's just, yeah, it's a really difficult one because we're still kind of unpacking it with ourselves, and we're also kind of happy just to let go of it because we believe, you know, if you look at the likes of some of the artists these days, like even look at Chapel Rowan, got dropped by a label for Pink Pony Club and then did it on her own. Do you know what I mean? Ray got dropped by the same label as us, you know, who's one of the greatest icons, you know, because she didn't want to carry on making dance music. I feel like we just came in, I felt like every single person at the label is more trying to build their own portfolio using us rather than actually trying to serve the band. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does, definitely. And I guess it must be really confusing as a band to be signed for something specifically, for having something that makes you special and that's built your audience to get you to the point that you've got a label in the first place, or labels that are interested. And then when you get into that scenario, you're kind of told that the thing that made you special isn't the thing you should be doing anymore. That must be really difficult to kind of get your head around as an artist in the first place.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's one of them. I think when we were in it, we were just like, these guys are the big dogs, you know, we didn't really want to wrestle too much. But eventually, I think around about May last year, when the album was announced, at that point, I just said to the band, like, rain or shine, I don't want to be on this label anymore.
Right.
I said, I'd rather, even if we become a flop and no one ever wants to listen to us again, I said, we'll do it guerrilla warfare style and do it our own way. You know, I'd rather have no label and be who we are. And I was sick to death of it, and we all felt the same. We didn't feel as close a band. It was hard to write music together. We no longer were sat in the practice room. We were trying to be sat at a laptop and make songs they'd like. It just felt hard. You know, after it, we were just kind of like, how do we go about this? And then I just said, we can either be a horror story of a band who goes through the major label system and burns because of it, and it's a sad story that you reference when talking to younger bands, or we could be one of the bands who can be heroes for other bands and show that we come back stronger. And actually, this is the turning point. That this, what's the word? Adversity. You know, we overcome adversity. So I sat down, and I'm completely sober, by the way. I don't drink any alcohol. do drugs. I don't smoke. I don't touch anything since I've done it because of this. And about October time, just put my head down, went in the band together. I'm like, we're going to write. And we lived in the practice room all November, December, January, and just said, we're going to write and we're not going to stop writing. And we finished an album. I wrote a song about it. I remember writing a song called Autonomy, and I was like, the album's done now. We kind of just put a taster out, and now we're signed to V2, who have also technically a fairly big label, but they have come in and just not told us anything what to do. They've just let us do exactly what we want to do out of the love for the music, let us go to who we want to record it, everything like that. So it shows that labels don't have to be like this, do you know what I mean?
With the album Fear for a Lifetime that came out last year, look, it's a hell of a debut album. I think it was one of the best albums to come out last year, and I think a lot of people felt the same. And one of the reasons that it felt like such a good album was it had, I thought, listening to it, had your identity in it. It felt like it was still pushing boundaries. There was still a bit of spoken word in it. What would have been different about it had you kind of had full creative control? How would it have felt different?
We had, weirdly enough, with Feel Life for a Lifetime, we did actually get plonked in the studio, and this is where the label's lousiness actually worked to our favour. They just didn't speak to us the whole time we were there. But what was there was a lot of songs that were like kind of, before we went, there was such a fear of kind of what direction we go. I love that album in the sense where it's got such a kind of timeless feel to it. I feel like it's got a sonic entity in it that will last forever. The album is very much it's a bit of a heartbreaking album. Like in the album, it's very much as there's optimism in it, it's very hopeless. And we didn't have a chance to rehearse any of the songs before it. We were in the studio for about 3 months, and we had to basically learn them all together whilst we were there. A lot of the songs were songs written by me with writers, and then the band had to basically put our touch on them. So Stone's a very, very hard working band. So we make sure that no rain or shine, we will make it be us. And that's why I Feel Like for a Lifetime still is us. I think the fact was, even with Feel Like for a Lifetime, though, by the time it came to making, like, we did an EP. I think we did an EP tour for our EP and did 7 in-store shows and made T-shirts for it to give out. And when it came to the album, I don't think the label wanted to do an album. They did not want to do an album. They wanted to continue doing EPs. If you think about it, really, they got 2 albums out of us. They got Punkadonk 1 and 2, which is 11 songs, and then an album. It's bullshit if you ask me. They get many out. They just want to keep pumping songs out. You're hoping one. It's just spread betting. Here's a really annoying thing. We actually had Fred from the B-52s lined up to sing on Train. He was down. It was all set up. And the label basically were like, is it cool having him on a song? And we were like, it's really fucking cool to have him on a song. He's a hero to us. Anyway, we were asking. He said he'd do it in December. They wouldn't fucking pay him. Eventually, by March, we realised that it weren't happening anymore. He retired, and we missed that window. And that was freaking devastating for us. We were fucking gutted. They spent 12 grand on a Left, Right, Forward video, which we fucking hate that video, the yellow tracksuits. But wouldn't pay the singer the B-52s a third of that fee for him to go in the studio and do it. He basically did it for nothing, just wanted studio cost. He wouldn't do it. And it was fucking gutted for us.
Your honesty is really refreshing, Finn, and I think it's really important as well, because I think there's a lot of bands who will be entering into a similar situation that you've been through, and just having that kind of cautionary tale. And what surprises me, I guess, a little bit is you're not new to this industry. Your dad obviously has been involved in it in 30 odd years. He kind of knows what's going on, and even someone in that situation kind of get caught off guard a little bit by this. Before we do talk about new stuff, because I want to get on to what's next and how the lads are and how the band feels, if you could rewind 4 years and give yourself one piece of advice, and I guess this applies to new bands that might be listening and they can take on that advice, what would that one piece of advice be that might have helped you avoid this pitfall?
Do you know what, right? I'm happy what happened. I'm happy with what happened because the way what it's led me to now, if I worry about what I would have said to myself, maybe I would have never, ever, because what I believe, this is maybe a stronger version of what I once was. And I am now more true to myself than ever. I am more strong than ever. And that, what happened with us through Polydor was amazing, in my opinion, because we got to learn so much by going through essentially the devil's belly of major labels. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not against major labels. There are teams on major labels that help bands and have done things right. So it doesn't have to be like that. Like I said, we're signed to a fairly decent label, but I'd love if other bands could learn off everything I've been through. My thing is just freaking smell the bullshit. I went into this deal Like, I made sure with the next deal that we had that I said, we want to put an album out. No fucking EP, no bollocks of this. We want to do an album straight away. I'm happy with everything that's happened to me. I think that it's part of our story, it's part of our narrative, and it's what's going to make the next album more true. And the last thing I'd like to say on Feel Like for a Lifetime is we are proud of that album. We're proud that we had the thing of Feel Like for a Lifetime. The album is a raw bottle of experimentation. We were so kind of unsure on what the fuck was going on in our lives, this kind of whirlwind, that we kind of just experimented. And that's what the beauty of it is. You know, what you'll notice the difference in Feel Like for a Lifetime and this next album is this next album will feel more stable in its own identity. Feel Like for a Lifetime is beautiful in the sense that it's uncertain, which I love for it. But yeah, if I went back to myself 4 years ago, probably just laugh and say, look, you've got a lot to go through. I'll see you in 4 years. Do you know what I mean? It's because in the place that I'm in my life right now, I'm happy. I can't regret the past. And I believe that all the songs I've written are a product of everything I've been through. I just know that the future is bright.
It's an amazing attitude to have. It's the right attitude to have as well. But quickly, before I let you go, how is it all in the camp? You've talked about the new album. You've got me excited for the new album already because I can't wait to hear stoners. Maybe they should be. But how are the boys? Is everyone united? Are you all in a strong place at the moment?
We're full blowing. We're the closest we've ever been since starting a band. We're truthful and honest with each other. There's no quarrels. The band don't feel separated. The band feel a part of it. Everyone writes the songs together. It's strong, unified, real. And it's going to be, we're leaning right back into the hardcore rock side, and it's going to be great. New music will be out in the next few months. You know, this summer we'll have a new song out. Get back to touring and absolutely kill it. Stone's ethos is we will stop at nothing until we get to where we believe we want to be. We will just forever keep pushing. I ain't shying away from the freaking billionaires. I ain't shying away from it. I ain't being scared of it. I ain't scared of calling them out. I ain't scared of hiding from them. After we left Polydor, I was so much wanting to just fucking put on the Instagram how much I fucking was pissed off. But I don't hate them. I don't hate them really. I just think that every single person who works for them is just worried about getting sacked. So they're all just trying to keep their jobs. And that's what I think. You know, if anything, I feel sorry for everyone who works for them. It's a fucking major label staff are just as much as a revolving door as the bands. We're all on a spreadsheet, and that's all they're looking at. You know, the big businessmen at the top are looking at spreadsheets. They ain't listening to music. They ain't looking at art. It's a business. But what I will say is, at the same time, I'm going to say fuck them, because we ain't letting any of that shit happen to us again. Every young band, don't think you need them. You know, it's better finding a home who believes in you rather than a home that fucking wants to fucking cash in on you. If a label doesn't want to make an album with you and they want to freaking do 50 EPs first, they're just spread betting. So fuck that. Fuck all them at the top. We're going to be tearing at their balcony.
Good to hear. Mate, really nice to speak to you. Thanks for sharing your story. I think it's a really important story to share, and your experiences are really important for bands that are breaking through, and appreciate the honesty as well. But cheers for chatting to me on Freshly Squeezed.
Nice one, Jim. Sorry if I freaking went off on a tangent to the end there.
Mate, no, it's ace. I love it. I love the passion.
Awesome, bro.
Nice one. Deep breath. Cheers to your ears. That was Finn Power from Stone talking about his experiences over the last 3 or so years with the record label that released their debut album. And it is still, as Finn says, a brilliant debut album, but I'm super excited for what album number 2 is going to sound like now, and the fact there will be an album number 2, which very almost wasn't the case. If this is your first time listening to Freshly Squeezed, if you came for the Finn Power interview, then make sure you listen to the shows in the back catalogue. This isn't normal. This is a bit unusual. Normally, every week, it's 3 or 4 bands chatting about their music and a little bit of their music, sometimes stuff you won't have heard anywhere else. So make sure you listen to the back catalogue, check out what's happened before. This week, Alex Spencer, Nathan Wrigley, Parkview and Stanley's all get a squeeze, and they are all well worth checking out. So make sure you listen to that, and make sure you're following for future episodes. If you are a regular visitor to this podcast, back to normal on Monday, and I'll see you then.
Freshly Squeezed, a new music podcast, was devised, produced and posted by Jim Selbeson. Sound design and additional production by Ant McGinley. The music, Blue Blazer, is written and produced by Spin Class. Stop.